Quite honestly, I had no idea that there was such a thing as a near-death experience before my own. I never read about any. I never talked to anyone who had had one. I didn't know it was a thing. Uh, After I had had it and experienced it, I was asking a lot of questions of myself and everything else. And that's when I uh, learned about what a near-death experience was, and I could understand it because that's what I had. And so, but no, there was before that, before my collapse, there was nothing that I knew about it. I didn't read about them. Uh, I didn't talk with anyone. And when I was starting to write out my thoughts, and that was a process I used to try to understand what had happened and what I experienced. And I purposely kept from looking at anybody else's experience so that I could focus on mine. And that's what ended up being my story that I wrote about that became a book, which is for people if they're interested. I don't push it on anybody. It's available. Well, again, depends on the definition of religion. Um, I attended a Protestant church here in my rural area. I grew up in it. So I was exposed to what you would call Western uh, religious philosophy. Um, to me, that really is not an important part of my thinking now anymore because to me, and people are probably going to criticize this, and they don't have to believe me, and that's fine because I'm happy with it. Religion to me does not hold the significance that it did before because religion is basically a human construct. Now, I'm not saying it's not important for people to have opinion. And I don't care what it is, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever. It doesn't matter. All of those initial teachers were of a high order. And over time, over time, humans have corrupted the message. Well, in my experience is the only thing I can really relate to. Other people have had theirs and they explain theirs, but I can only speak to my own experience. Um, in relation, I've been asked if there's reincarnation. Well, it depends on your definition of that word, and all human words, regardless of language that you find them, are a vocabulary where the words try to communicate a similar idea with the person you're speaking them to. And that doesn't always end up being the same thing or contain the same meaning from one person to another. So reincarnation to me, coming back again, is much different now after my experience than what I would have thought it was prior to that. Uh, my experience was like a demarcation line in the sand because everything that happened before my collapse changed once I was lying dead on the fitness room floor. And I just see things now differently from what I did before, even though we may use the same words to describe the same event or element previously. My interpretation of it has changed. And one thing I do mention is that people have asked me, I mean, emergency room nurses that I spoke with asked me if my experience could have been a dream while I was dead, not functioning on the floor. And my answer to that is, well, yes, it could have been a dream, but I don't believe it was. because there's no way I could bring that experience back with me as vivid as it was. I think that every one of us, you, your parents, your siblings, your friends, uh, all had dreams, and usually they happen at night. Some people may have them during the day, but let's go with just having them at night. When you wake up in the morning, you may remember snippets, little bits of it, but you generally don't remember the entire sequence of things that you dreamt about. And it comes in chopped up in different bits. Then you may remember something a couple of days later. But generally, they fade very quickly. They fade very, for me anyway. And it's just kind of like they dissipate out into the ethers. However, my experience has never changed one iota, and I remember most everything I saw. Now, I qualify that by saying I think they experienced things that I still have not realized. Because when I was exposed to a dimension with infinite amount of knowledge and love, how is the human brain going to access all of that? I don't think it's possible because when you talk about infinite knowledge, you're talking about enormous amount that can't fit into one's human brain. So as the time has gone on, it's not that I experienced new things that I hadn't remembered before. It's that my understanding of what I experienced has evolved. It's the same. I can think of the whole process from when I first found myself in that eternal dimension until I left, and it never changes. It's like it was, you to use a human term, it was like it was tattooed on my soul and I brought it back with me, and it never changes. So when I was talking about my seeing things differently from before this event to now, I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unexperience what I experienced there. So I know it's real. And that's what I explained to the emergency room nurses is that to me, it's as real as the people that were sitting in the chairs in front of me. And I can see now, even a decade later, I can see the same scene behind everything I look at. It's like background. And that I'm comfortable with because it was such a welcoming atmosphere. If a spirit described what I was in as an and that's really highlights the challenges with finding human words that can explain what I experienced because it really falls short of everything that's out there. So your question about reincarnation, yes, I reincarnated. I left and I came back. I didn't turn into something else other than a different person within myself because I have to give a little background to the events that happened on that early October morning. For those who are unaware, I live in south central Wisconsin in the upper Midwest of the United States. My wife and I have a grass-based grazing beef farm in that part of the region. And there are really three touchstone points of that morning that became involved with not only my collapse, but my rescue. And the first was involved the cattle in our pasture. The second involved the rehab and fitness center where I went to exercise. And the third was the you could call it the timing and the locale of where my collapse happened. Um, that morning, every morning, I would go out and check our cattle. We had 27 head of grazing beef cattle out in a 56-acre pasture. And so every morning I would go out there and check to make sure there were no illnesses, no injuries, or just make sure they were okay. And every morning I went out, nothing happened. I could walk up to them, I could walk amongst them, I could talk to them, scratch them, and because they were familiar with me. Well, that morning, it was the 5th of November, I walked out there, and they were all lying down in the grass, and the grass was about 2.5 feet high. Well, I didn't get more than a couple 100 feet from them, and one of them jumped up, looked at me, perked her ears, which is a signal of alertness and alarm in an animal, and looked at me for a second or two, and then took off running across the field and stopped about 200 feet away. Well, that got the attention of the rest of them flying down, and they all got up, looked at me, and they ran and joined. Now, that had never happened before. And it didn't happen the morning before. And subsequently, after I was able to go back out into the pasture, after I was home recovering, it never happened again. So thinking back to that, something they noticed in me either alarmed them or they did not recognize when they did every other morning. But I never really picked up on that at the time. And maybe if I had, I still wouldn't have done anything where no one would feel very excited about it. So that morning, we had previously arranged to have the cars replaced or the tires replaced on our car. And so I was going to go into our local village, which is 12 miles away, to have them replaced. So typically when I went into town, as we call it, our local village, I would take my gym bag with me because I had been working out, exercising at our local hospital had a wellspring center, which was a fitness and a rehab center. It was staffed by people, and the people working out were observed. And I got in early, and instead of turning right to go to have a tire change, I decided I had plenty of time for a quick exercise, so I turned left and went to the rehab fitness center. I parked my car, I walked down to the basement, changed clothes, came back up, said hi to the 3-4 staff members that were in the room, did a few stretches, and sat down to do some arm curls to get started. And I did my 20 rather modest arm curls, and I stood up next to the bench, and the strangest thing happened. I looked down at both of my forearms because they were tingling. They were tingling like they had fallen asleep, like when you lie on them and you get up. But both of them were that way. And that is the last thing I remember for over 8 hours. And one moment, I'm standing next to this bench. The next moment, I'm lying flat on the floor. Come to find later, not breathing, no heart rate, nothing. They considered me dead until they got help. But in that moment, I found myself in a completely different dimension than the one here. And again, coming back to the use of human words, I was floating, but I wasn't floating on water. I was floating on energy waves. And I was floating on what I will describe as some sort of a raft, where I was just going just up and down. It was so peaceful. It was so loving. The atmosphere was so welcome. And when I looked, and I say look, because was not my body anymore, I saw these energy waves coming towards me. Not only towards me, but they passed through me as they continued on. And this was happening all over this space that I was in. And I remember looking at what I thought were my hands, because I could see the outline form of it. But they were like energetic filaments that were stitched together to make it look like it was me. I could see through them because the energy waves were passing through them. They were translucent. And I'll come back to that later, because that was a very unique realization that I had during my recovery. So as I looked at these energy waves coming towards me, I saw that there were other, what I will call or use the term entities, also sitting out in the distance, also floating around me. And some were coming in, some were leaving. It was like an international airport. I didn't know who they were, what they were. I didn't know where they came from, where they were going. All I knew that I was here in a place that was so safe, so loving, so welcoming, so accepting, that it felt so good. I had never been in a place like that. I had never experienced that here. So when I looked up, I'm going to use some words that really don't describe it, but it was this gigantic sphere, this golden, glowing, reddish, pulsing energy. Just if you packed it, 10 million suns together. It was glowing so much, but it was not so warm that I couldn't reach out and touch it. And it was like it was asking me to meld with it, join with it, become part of it. I didn't understand it, but I didn't need to, because it was all this welcoming through energy transfer. There wasn't human talk. And so when I was looking at this pulsing sphere, I saw all these little sparks coming off the surface. I mean, billions of these sparks shooting out from it and going in all different directions. And it looked like it looked like a sparkler fireworks. I mean, it was just amazing. And it didn't seem odd. It just felt like I had come home. So I decided to look to see what was beside me, because I had seen these little entities flying in. So I want to see what else was there. And again, trying to use a term to describe this is going to be has been really a challenge. If you take everything we know about the universe we exist in here, the billions of light years across, the billions upon billions of stars, the black holes, the solar systems, the galaxies, the dark space, you take all of, if you can find an edge, you take all of that and compress it down to what I'll refer to as a single sheet of paper. And you suspend it out here in this eternal space. And then you take another one and you suspend it right next to it, and another one next to that, and another one next to that. And you keep going in any direction that a human mind can comprehend. Vertical, horizontal, forward, backward, crosswise. That there were all of these different universes and dimensions suspended in this eternal space. And not only that, but there was an energetic filament attached to each one of them. And it was reaching up and attaching itself to what I'll describe as a spider web-like matrix surrounding this golden glowing energy. And it was pumping love, welcome, acceptance uh, into each one of these universes and dimensions. And the thing was, I don't remember thinking this was an unusual thing to see. It just felt like, wow, this is great. This is why are you, how did I get here and why do I want to go? So at this point, I decided to look what was behind. It kind of like going on a road trip and not checking what's down the side road. So I turned around as we understand front and back to look, and what I saw was infinite. And that's because this eternal dimension, the emotion within it, acted like a magnifying glass so that the farther I looked, the clearer it became. And I could see the edge of eternity. I don't know. I don't know the optics or the alchemy that it takes to do that. But that's what I saw. And so when I turned back, it was like I had been in this space, if you were to put a timeline in it, for centuries. It just felt like there was no time at all. And that what we consider time was just stretched to nothing anything. And so back at the fitness center, later I found out there were a dozen EMTs, 5 hospitals, furiously working to revive my foot. Now, I didn't know that at the time. And if I had, I couldn't have even told them not to bother. Just let me go, because this is great. Why would I want to leave this? But I couldn't tell them. And so I was suspended in this eternal dimension and thinking, this is where I came from. This is where we all come. This is what I'll use the term source of all creation, the divine creator, the goddess, whatever it is that you can use to identify in your own mind as a supreme knowledge. And so that's where I knew I was going. And I didn't ask why. I didn't ask if I wanted to leave. But then the interesting thing happened that when I was thinking, in less than a blink of an eye, I was gone. And I was back in my body here because they had restarted my heart. And I know that because I have the framework of what they were doing. I got all my medical records after this as I was trying to understand it. So I had been on the longest trip I had ever taken in 6 minutes. And I came back with an experience that would take me a very long time to understand and even longer to explain to anybody. And yet, it would still be another 8 months before I would be given the answer as to why I returned here. And when I learned that answer, then everything. So that is the general outline of what happened. Now, people have asked me, how can you possibly remember all that? As I mentioned, I think that my soul, my inner self, my truest part of me, which is the same for everyone else, brought that information back with it so that I could start to understand what I experienced. Now, I've said before, and I've said it to everybody I talk to, you don't have to believe me, and that's fine. All I'm asking is for anyone listening to this to just think of what are the other possibilities? That there is nothing? Well, I don't believe that because I saw what there is. And I know my experience was true because I would not be given that amount of information and be deceived. Now, I can't tell you who gave me that information. I believe we had guides, or some people may call them guardian angels. I think they're a pathway for us to experience these things. I don't think they make us do it, but this is how I interpret it. And again, if no one wants to believe it, that's fine. But I know what my experience was, and I'm very satisfied with that. And I know I wasn't deceived. And I even asked at one point in my recovery because I needed to know if it was true. And I was told it was. And because I didn't want to be deceived. And I certainly didn't want to deceive anybody I was supposed to. So that's really the essence, I guess, would be the best word of what my experience was. Now, my understanding of what that experience was has evolved as I've been given more information. And I think that's because my inner self is starting to has processed it so that I'm able to handle what has been given. I've used an analogy that, okay, we have so many gigabytes in our human brain. So what would happen if that human brain gets exposed to an infinite number of gigabytes, whatever top number you can say, and you bring that back, trying to compress it into a human being? What's going to happen? Either to me, either you're going to fry your brain, or none of it's going to make sense, or something else will happen that you can't transfer the information. So at this point, I do believe I was given only enough information to handle safely back here, so I could do what I was supposed to do. Now, there are a couple of things, if I may, there are a couple of things that I learned from that experience that I think are important in explaining what I saw. Those little sparks that came out from the surface. I now understand, and this is my understanding of it, that is each of us at some point in the creation process from the source of all creation. And that is what I was looking at when I was looking at my finger. It was the expression of my inner self, my inner spirit, that had expanded to make it look like me so I wouldn't be afraid. And I think that happens to everyone who leaves initially. That's my sense of it. But our bodies, our essence, our body is more than the sum of its parts. By that I mean, when I was standing next to that Armature bench, I had all of the same body parts: 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 ears, some hair. I had all of the same body parts standing as I did moments later, lying dead on the floor. Except that inner part of me, that inner spirit, that soul essence, was not there. And that's where I was. I had gone to this other dimension. And I was experiencing that. So when they restarted I had to come back. I had to leave, come back into my body so that it could function, so that I could do what I was sent back to do. Otherwise, I would have stayed. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. The reason I came back. I'm grateful to I'm very happy to be here to experience this dimension, even though it's a lower energetic. But if I left again, which I will do, uh, just as everyone else will, I know what's going to happen. Yes, yes. I realized that spiritual essence of me that was in that eternal dimension that could touch the face of God could come back. We can travel time and distance because there is no time once you get outside of our planetary system. Once you get outside of the Earth, there is no time. This is a human construct for us to understand and navigate our own lives here. But once you get out of this small planet, eternal time encompasses our human. We're just a little speck, but we are here to learn, and that's why we are come here in the first place. We are here to have these experiences in this lower dimension, lower, denser existence that our spirit, our soul, could not have if it didn't enter a body. And so at some point, I made the decision, my soul made the decision to come down into this lower, more dense dimension and experience what's here. Because having this body, we can, we have the tactile senses, we have the emotional senses, we have the uh, whatever other kind of senses, visual. I mean, I could not see those things with my human eyes, but I could bring them back and understand. It was looking like, it was looking, it was like looking through a different lens when it is there. That the low wattage of my human eyes here could never see. So when I made the decision as that spirit, as that spark to drop down into this dimension, I had to take the form of a human being. If that was my choice. I might have come here as an animal, but that's the choice the soul is given. Once we separate from the God, as the source of all creation, we are given free will. We are gifted. And so our soul from that point on makes all the decisions it wants to do. But it's part of the learning process. So I came here. I was born of my parents. I was raised by them. And I've now spent almost 74 years existing here in this dimension. And when this body ceases to function, which it will, because it's not made to last forever, my spirit, my soul, my essence will take off again and go into the energy levels of that higher dimension and go on to another experience somewhere. I don't have any idea where that is right now. And I don't know how that process happens. But I've experienced it, and I know it will happen again. So that is one of the things that I'm trying to explain to people is we don't have anything to fear. Death is not something to be afraid of. Yeah, we don't necessarily need it to come tomorrow. But if it comes, you're going to be safe. I'm going to be safe. Everyone's going to be safe because we are not choice. Our bodies serve. But our inner essence is a gift. It is part of the DNA of that creator energy. And why would the creator, the supreme knowledge, want to destroy something it's made? So that is my understanding. And do I have a perfect life? No. Because I had such an extraordinary experience, I was not given a free pass. I still have to pay my bills. I still am working to pay those bills. I still have to follow the rules of the road so I don't cause anybody harm. I still have to encounter and put up with people I probably don't care for. That's part of the agreement to come here. It's not all going to be roses. And for someone like me who had this extraordinary experience, some days that's pretty darn frustrating because I know what it's like to be there. And uh, one of the things about the dream aspect is when you have a dream, you don't have much attachment to it. But every time I think of this experience and I can go through it and it's all the same, I get that warm feeling welling up within me that I had when I was there. So not only was it a transference of information, it was a transference of viewing. And so I know it's true because why would this keep welling up? It's not just a memory. It's an energetic alchemy that really makes it all understandable, at least to me. And I've been trying, and for 10 years now, I've been trying to explain to people in ways that are comprehensible to them, but may not make any sense. I mean, they may think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I'm happy with that. But understanding the reason I came back really changed the whole dynamic of my experience and what I'm doing now. I still live on a farm, and we still have a grass-based farm. We still live in a rural area, and whatever comes will come, and I'm not worried about it. What is truth and reality? Well, truth is God. In whatever form you think God exists for you, and whatever you call that God. We humans have always tried to use a word so that they can understand it, which is what I was talking about earlier before. I don't know that God has a name. The One, the Word, the Blessed, in whatever form you think God takes. And I think religion is a pathway to try to understand that God, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, pick a term that resonates. It doesn't matter because the source of all creation is many things to many people, but it is always the same, regardless of how you want to interpret it. God doesn't create. The source of all creation is the divine creator. Our interpretation of that essence is what changes, and that's a human fault. I mean, because we don't fully comprehend. How can you? How can we, with our uh, low intellect, really understand something as massive as all knowing, all seeing, all love, all wonder, all welcoming? And there's no judgment, none whatsoever. And people want to say there is, but they have an agenda of wanting to um, confine people to their own way of thinking, or a particular tip, or a particular religion. You know, there are when humans get involved, there becomes a control mechanism that kicks in. And I don't think that God has any mechanism that God wants to kick in. I think it's all acceptance. It's all love. And that's what I felt there. I mean, which was really frustrating to me when I got back here because I saw the chaos, what we refer to as chaos. And I'm wondering, why can't people get along? I, as I mentioned before, it took 8 hours before I finally came to realize I was awake. You know, the EMTs and the ER people said that I was talking with them. Okay. I don't remember any of it. And it was like I had what I refer to as interdimensional confusion, because at that point I was still feeling I was in that eternal dimension, and yet I had my feet planted here, and none of it made any sense whatsoever. So it took a long time to, I don't want to say reconcile, but to understand the diversity of these two different things I was experiencing and not go crazy because I put those. When I finally sat and just let it ease, uh, and just lowered my anxiety, then things started to. It's when you are afraid of something, then you draw more fear to yourself. So if you leave and push back and push out the fear and the doubt, that's when the opportunity for understanding comes in. I probably should mention, while we're talking of the reason I came back and why I'm doing these interviews, because I certainly wouldn't have to, but I feel I need to explain my story and what I experienced on a different dimensional level. After I got out of the hospital, which was 4 days later, what it was, two blockages in my heart. So I had spent the next 8 months trying to find answers for why did it happen, where it did, when it, with all of those people to health, and not 1 hour earlier when I was out in the pasture with cat. Because if it had happened there, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because there would have been nobody to find me for 8 hours. And my wife had a time job, so when she came home, she would not know where I was. And then she'd have to come looking in a 50-acre pasture. And by that time, it would have, from my human, it would have been all over, except I'd still be there. But I would not be able to communicate with you what my experience. So that was the big question. Those were the big questions. And after getting out of the hospital, they put me on medication to lower my blood pressure, which was already fairly low. So it dropped it even more. And I was really struggling over the next 8 months, trying to function. I mean, my wife wouldn't let me handle any equipment without her at least observing. She wouldn't let me out in the pasture and check the cattle by myself because she was afraid I wouldn't come back. So an experience like mine has rippling effects on the family, especially its spouse or partner, and on your friends. It's not just the person that has it that's experienced it. The others are, but from a different direction. So I came down one morning for breakfast, and we took a slow way down two levels of steps in our farmhouse. And I sat down at the chair at the end of our kitchen table, and Mary was sitting at the other end with holding a notepad in her hand, which she generally didn't do. And I didn't think much of it. She waited until I got settled. And then she asked me, would you like to hear what you said? And I said, well, I don't remember saying anything. And she said, well, you did. And I had a notepad next to me on the table next to the bed. And so I thought I might write it down if she said so, because she thought it might be important. Well, I said, okay, go ahead. What did I say? Well, she said, you sat up in bed and you were mumbling, but I couldn't understand a word you were saying. And then you stopped. And then you started shaking your head from side to side like this. And she said, all I was saying was, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And she asked me, what don't you believe? And she said, I told her, I don't believe the reason I came back. And she asked me, why did you come back? And Mary said, what I told her was I came back to be a conduit of hope for those who don't have any or those who don't think there is any. And then there was this pause. And I said, what else? She shrugged her shoulders and said, nothing. You laid down and went to sleep. And that was it. But when she said that morning at the other end of our kitchen table, I had the answers I was looking for. I then instantly understood why I was back, why it happened, where it happened, when it did. Because I had something here I had to do yet. And so this is part of what I'm trying to do, to explain to people that, yeah, we're all is, but we don't die. Eternal. We have a spirit that continues in whatever religious context you would. And I really don't care if people have a religion they ascribe to. I don't care if they don't have any. We all are going to find ourselves in that situation down the road. We come here to learn, and we all have unique experience. And our inner essence, our tattooed soul, if you will take that, and we'll go back into that eternal dimension and go on to another experience in one of those multitude universes and dimensions that are. That's what I understand all of that to be. Then it made sense because we're going to go from this experience to another, probably in another dimension, probably in another universe. Can I tell you what that is? No. But I know what's going to happen. No. That's really, that was all the essence of how I understand it now. And we're here to learn, and our journey is with certain people and not others. But we are here to recognize the divinity in every other person, because we all have that DNA from the God source, the source of all creation, whatever you want to call it. We are all carrying that in that little spark that we use to come down into this lower dimension, energetic dimension, and inhabit a body, because this is how we get around here. And then once we leave, that's going to tape off again and go on to another experience. So it is a circular, to me, a continuing path. And so if that is a form of reincarnation, that's fine with me. It is what I experienced and what I see is going to happen to not only me, but everyone else. But again, no one has to believe that, but I'm satisfied with that answer because it does answer all the questions I have. Do I have other questions? Oh yeah, I do. And I'm hoping to find an answer. But with the information I've been given, I'm quite satisfied with it. If I don't get anything else, it is my answer. Now everyone else can have their own answer, and that's fine. And I think when you see other videos, people have a different experience. Well, why wouldn't they? Because we are unique individuals here. So when we leave, why would we all have a unique experience that would not be identical to someone else? From what I've seen in other stories, there are certain threads that still come through that are very unique, similar in everyone's story. A lot of this now, to me, is so interconnected. I've been asked when I've explained my comprehension of how we are created. That raised a few eyebrows. How can you know? Well, I was given answers from what I'll refer to as guides. Some people can call them angels. You can call them anything you want. I think they're all around us. But they cannot experience this dimension the same way we can because, again, we have the physical sensations, we have the emotional attachments, we have the tactile senses that they don't have. I think they're here, and I'm sure people have seen them in their own way. But I think we all have access to those guides. It was the term I'll use. I don't think they tell us what to do or make us do anything because we have free will. Once we left that creator energy, we have given free will. So we have our own actions and we have to take responsibility for the consequences of what we do. However, I think the guides provide an open area of opportunity for us to make those choices. And that ultimately we are the ones who make them and have to live with it. Like that morning, I had the choice of turning right and going to get the tire changed in our car, maybe sitting there for a half hour or whatever, or I could take that turn to go left and be in an area where I had no idea the morning I got up that I was going to be dead later that morning. No idea. But I had a choice. And the choice I made is the one that put me on a different path. Now, had I taken the path to the place to get the tires changed, maybe nothing would have happened in the same amount of time that he left. Maybe I would have gone home and then gone out to the pasture, and maybe that's where it would have. But those are all, possibilities. But the fact is that I made the choice to turn left is what the consequences I'm living with. But that's with everyone. We make good choices. We make what people consider bad choices, but we have to live with it and work with it. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It's just we made a bad choice, or we made a good choice. So it's how you look at the whole spectrum of, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Well, how did it change my life? It was night and day difference because I'm looking at things much differently now than what I did before. Again, I have to, I still have to work. I still need to pay our bills, but I have more patience and more long range understanding that, the stuff I own is ephemeral. I mean, it's not going to last for me. I might be able to pass it on to somebody, but I'm not going to take it with me. Nor is anybody else going to take that with them. So even the person who has the lowest lifestyle is going to leave that behind. And the person with the highest lifestyle, they're going to leave that behind. You're taking it with them all their wealth. So we are all on an equal plane. We just have different physical circumstances here that we are navigating. But spiritual, essence-wise, we are all the same. We all carry the same divinity within us as the goddess, because that's where we came from. So to look down on anyone is such small thinking. Or to want to accumulate everything that you possibly can is small thinking. Because eternity is much larger than that. The whole concept of it and the existence. And to understand that takes a lot of pressure off. Oh yeah, you're going to have to pay your bills, but what happens if you don't? Maybe you move on to something else that's a better opportunity. So it's how we frame it. I mean, think of a picture for it. And all we're focused on is what's in the center. We're not looking at what's on the sideline. There's more to that picture in what's beside it or above, below it. We're just focused on that one little part, and that's our lives. We're just focused on that one little part within that frame. So if you take away the frame, you open up your existence. I guess that's what, and to me, all of that is the hope of something beyond what we experience here. That this is not me. Our bodies, yeah, then they're going to go off, but we continue. And my understanding now of how we were created in the first place is this. And again, no one has to believe it, but this is how I understand it now, after going through what I've gone through. Within having experienced this golden, pulsing, loving goddess from which all of these sparks are coming out, at some point in God's mind, if you there was the potential within this, I don't want to call it a cauldron, but a furnace, not damning furnace, just a fiery love burning. At some point, there was this potential energy floating within it. And eventually, there was a thought that God had. And that created a crystal. That little thought. Billions. Gazillion. Whatever. But it created that crystal. And then it became embodied and infused and compressed and created into the spark that became us. And then it was released. And in all of that process, we were given the touch of the DNA of God. And then that spark, when it was released, was given the gift of free will from that same God. And that's us. That's you. That's me. That's your parents. That's my parents. That's your brothers and sisters. That's everybody. So that's how it all makes sense to me. And I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to believe that. And like I say, I'm comfortable if nobody else wants to believe that as well. That's their choice. But they're going to find out eventually that that's how it all works. So that's my story. To this point. Now, I'm hoping for more understanding of some of the things that I experienced there, but when that happens, we can have another conversation. No, I do not, and I'll explain why. The concept of heaven and the concept of hell, which is a damnation of some sort, to me, do not exist, because in that eternal dimension, there was no judgment. There was only love and welcoming and acceptance. And the idea of quote unquote hell is a human construct. And it's because some people way back when wanted to control the population by saying this is the way it is. And unless they had their own experience, I don't think that is it. And I get that today. That, well, he doesn't believe in this and that. Well, no, because negative terminology such as fear, death, hell, purgatory, whatever it is. Those are not high energy concepts. Those are low density, low energy concepts. So none of them can rise to the level of this eternal community. It's not that they're banished, they just can't get there because that fear uh, of whatever gets bound up together and it gets disassembled, it gets disintegrated, uh, dispersed before it even can get to the upper level dimension, which is God. So it's only in humans' minds that there is concepts like. Well, certainly there's a human element, emotional element of losing someone you've been close to, or maybe someone you gave birth to, or someone you've been friends with a long time. That's part of the human experience, and we cannot escape it. We chose to come here to experience everything we can experience. We tend to shy away from things that we can, but it is all part of our experience here in this dimension. To them, I would say they're not wrong. Your loved one is not wrong. Yeah, they've departed physically, but you can remember them because their essence is still in your brain, still in your heart. So what have you lost? When and I understand the grieving part, and I think that's a human emotion, but I think it's also a good one because you need to purge all of that grief and get it out if you can. To hold it within, I think it is physically uh, is a hindrance to your physics. So to get out the emotion in some form, yeah, there's a grieving process that goes with losing a loved one, but they're not lost. Certainly not from what I expect. And so, what could be better than that when they're never lost? Even if we think they're gone, physically they are, but they're still here because you think of it. And so they are, but they are still existing somewhere, maybe not within our level of vision here. Get yourself a pair of eternal lenses and you'll see that. Because, this is just a transition. I'm not trying to be flippant. I mean, losing someone can be a devastating experience. And if people are having trouble with it, they should seek help if it's causing them trouble. There's no shame in it. But for me, my mother died 4 years ago. And so the thing I've been having trouble with is grieving it because I know what she's going through. I know what my dad's going through. I mean, that may not be very comforting to somebody who wants to hear something else. I understand that. But for me, it's the non thing. But again, do I want to leave tomorrow? No. Do I want my wife to leave tomorrow? No. My children? No. My grandchildren? No. But I can't stop what happened. None of we can minimize risk to a great extent. But strange things happen. And so strange thing happened to me. My wife couldn't have stopped it if she had wanted to. But I guess that's how I would answer that they're not lost. And that's really the hope that I'm trying to explain is that, yeah, they're not with us right now, physically, but they are still in existence. And that's why I wanted to take you back to explain my understanding of how we're created, because why would the Creator want to destroy us? I cannot believe that that's possible. I have written a lot of books. Yes. Mostly about half of them are about agriculture and how to raise animals on a farm if you wanted a small farm. I've written a couple of local histories that were of interest to me. Uh, I've had some articles in national publications, some put into a book room. So my writing is really my base is agriculture and everything that agriculture encompasses, which is life. I mean, without without the 6 inches of topsoil, some sunshine, and some water, none of us would be here. So that the soil in the landscape is, to me, the source of a lot of my writing. Well, I did okay. I've not tried to monetize my experience. So I ended up writing a book, 6 minutes in eternity. And I started writing it so that I could try to process what I was asking for. And so I began writing it to understand it for myself, not for anybody else. I mean, I could hardly explain it to my wife. And it became important that I get answers that I could understand myself before I could possibly share it with anybody else. So after I got it written, I passed it off to my publisher, Lisa Hagen, and she wanted to go with it. And that's how we got it published. So it's available on Amazon, but it's also available as a Kindle or there's an audiobook if people just want the audiobook. I'm going to point out one thing. You see the picture behind me? That was taken on our farm one evening as the sun was going down. This picture was created by an artist in London who never knew my story, but that's what he came up with. So it's rather interesting how the synchronicity between the two from, someone who never knew me or my story could come up with the same concept as what we actually saw, on our farm. So that's why I use this kind of like my guardian when I'm giving interviews because because it's the light of truth, and I have to be in unison with it in order to tell my story. The thing I'd like to leave with your audience is that love is the reason we are here. Recognizing the divinity in everyone we meet, everyone we don't meet, everyone we like, and even those we don't like. That's the reason that we're on this journey here. And hope. Hope is the path on that journey that each of us can walk if we choose. So that's really what I want to leave with with your audience, anyone who would see this, is that hope is always there, and we do not die, and there's no reason to be afraid.